Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Mitch McConnell and this permanent political class is the most corrupt and incompetent group of individuals in this country. Let's have a serious discussion of what's going on here in Alabama. They've raised $30 million to Judge Moore's, 2 or 3? And they've spent $30 million. They did not come down here to Alabama to have a reasoned discussion with you, to have a debate with you, to have any kind of talk about the issues of immigration, the issues of trade, anything that's important today, America's commitments throughout the world. What they did is spend $30 million to destroy a man. Now, is that money going to work? They didn't have enough smarts to do it in a sophisticated manner. They took out 30-second TV spots. You know why? Because they think you're a pack of morons. They think you're nothing but rubes. They have no interest at all in what you have to say, what you have to think, or what you want to do. And tomorrow, you're going to get an opportunity to tell them what you think of the elites that run this country. A vote for Judge Roy Moore is a vote for Donald J. Trump.
Smattering. Golf applause.
And a vote for Donald J. Trump is a vote to make America great again.
Believe me.
Oh, wow. So today is the big day in Alabama. Today is strange versus stranger. Strange and stranger. That's what your choices are down there. So, I'll tell you this much. Russians will not be interfering in that election because they can't lose. You're going to get some racist asshole no matter how you go. But, of course, we do have a preference here at the Randi Rhodes Show, the big show. We have a preference for Judge Roy Moore. Why? Why? Because he's so vile. Because he's so bizarre. Because he brought a gun last night to his own rally. I swear to God, he brought a gun. He dressed up like a cowboy. And he brought a gun. And he looked like Roy Rogers, not Roy Moore. He looked like Roy Rogers circa 1954.
It's been very hard for my wife and myself.
I'm sorry.
To wither 2, nearly 3 months of negative ads.
Oh, how horrible.
That we couldn't answer with money because we didn't have it. Ads that were completely false. That I don't believe in the Second Amendment.
Uh-oh.
I believe in the Second Amendment. They say guns are bad, that they kill. Well, I know a lot about guns. I'm the one that has used guns in combat. I know what guns do.
Oh, for Pete's sake. So the only way that Luther Strange, Big Luther, which sounds like Big Loser with a lisp, Big Luther. The only way that Big Luther can outdo Judge Roy Moore, who has no respect for the Constitution, as, witnessed by his career as a judge. He's been kicked off the Supreme Court of Alabama 2 times. Once because, thou shalt not kill, which is part of the 10 Commandments that he is obsessed with. Apparently he skips that one and, skips the love thy neighbor as you love thyself. I don't know which one he likes. I guess nobody coveted his wife, so I don't know which one means, the world to him. But anyway, he was kicked off because he wouldn't remove a giant stone monument from his courtroom. And then he was kicked off again after the voters in Alabama put him back on the Supreme Court for refusing to obey the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court said that same-sex marriage was the law of this land, he refused, and then he wrote a letter to all 50 governors calling on them to convene a constitutional convention to ban same-sex marriage. That's the the guy that's Roy Rogers in circa 1954. But the other guy, Luther Strang, the only way he could top what Roy Moore did last night is to actually shoot something. And I didn't see him actually shooting anything, so I think he's probably going to lose. I do. But it's a good thing that this race ends today. So go out there and vote, Alabama. And why do we prefer Roy Moore? Because he's so bizarre. He's so unacceptable. He's so, full frontal racist. He's so full frontal anti-Supreme Court, anti-law of the land, the 10 Commandments, which he's obsessed with. He won't follow himself. He won't follow any of the nation's law. I mean, he's just so out there that it would be so easy to beat him. Now, remember, this is just a Republican primary. That's all this is. And, Steve Bannon is telling people in Alabama that, the establishment thinks that they're all a bunch of rubes because if Steve Bannon wanted to do active measures in this election, he wouldn't have taken out TV ads. He would have used Facebook like, he did before with the Russians' help. So, like I said, the Russians are not going to interfere in this election because there's just no way they can lose with with either of these guys. But we have a Democrat who will run against the winner today in Alabama, and our Democrat is Doug Jones, and Doug Jones is a prosecutor. Doug Jones is a guy who prosecuted the last 2 remaining Ku Klux Klan members who blew up the 16th Street Baptist Church and killed 4 little black girls in Alabama, in Birmingham. And so, you got to kind of know that Judge Roy Moore is going to be, like a very poor candidate against a prosecutor like Doug Jones. And so that's why I would be, if I were in Alabama and I were a registered Republican, because they, of course, it's closed, then, I'd go for Roy Moore. Meanwhile, the man shows up in a cowboy outfit, and this is his appeal to Alabamians. It's just unbelievable. So both candidates, as it turns out, are Trump's choice. Both of them are. Trump, this is when the whole NFL contretemps started. It is when Trump went down to Alabama to campaign for Big Luther, loser with a lisp. Big Luther. Big loser. Yeah, this is when this whole thing started because, Trump gave one of those crazy off the hook meandering word salad speeches.
And we can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place. And by the way, Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. Little Rocket Man, we're going to do it because we really have no choice.
Oh,
and
my God.
I want to tell you something.
We're going to do it.
And I'm sure he's listening because he watches every word. And I guarantee you one thing, he's watching us like he never watched anybody before.
And that's all he cares about.
That I can tell you.
He's an exhibitionist.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired.
He's fired! All right, so far we're going to blow up North Korea because we have to, and sons
And by
of
the way,
bitches.
folks, just in case you're curious,
Yeah.
no, Russia did not help me. Okay?
Oh,
Russia.
my God.
I call it the Russian hoax. One of the great hoaxes. Actually, that's the thing I was thinking about. It. That's the thing that the Democrats did best. They lost the election, and they didn't know what happened. And they needed an excuse. So they said, Russia. And then they said, wait a minute, Russia. And Trump, honestly, it's the thing they did best. They did a rotten job of running. But to convince people about this hoax, that was probably the thing that they did best, but it is one great hoax. No, Russia did not help me. That I can tell you.
That's how he campaigns for loser Strange. Now, let's just do a little flashback here, okay? Let's go back to when Clint Watts of the FBI Cyber Division testified in front of Congress about whether or not Trump was aiding and abetting Russia. I mean, why Russian active measures? And of course, today we find out that their Facebook is turning over these the $100,000 worth of ads, which, by the way, $100,000 worth of targeted ads on Facebook will get you viral. It will get you millions and millions of views because people share it, people read, people disseminate it for you. So, but this was what Clint Watts was telling the Senate when he was asked about Russian active measures and why they work so well.
Part of the reason active measures have worked in this U.S. election is because the commander-in-chief has used Russian active measures at time against his opponents. On 14 August 2016, his campaign chairman, after a debunked Incirlik...
When you say his, who's his?
Paul Manafort. Cited the fake Incirlik story as a terrorist attack on CNN, and he used it as a talking point. On 11 October, President Trump stood on a stage and cited what appears to be a fake news story from Sputnik News that disappeared from the internet. He denies the intel from the United States about Russia. He claimed that the election could be rigged. That was the #1 theme pushed by RT, Sputnik News, white outlets, all the way up until the election. He's made claims of voter fraud, that President Obama is not a citizen, that Congressman Cruz is not a citizen. So part of the reason active measures works, and it does today in terms of Trump Tower being wiretapped, is because they parrot the same lines. So Putin is correct. He can say that he's not influencing anything because he's just putting out his stance. But until we get a firm basis on fact and fiction in our own country, get some agreement about the facts, whether it be, do I support the intelligence community or a story I read on my Twitter feed, we're going to have a big problem. I can tell you right now today, gray outlets that are Soviet-pushing accounts tweet at President Trump during high volumes when they know he's online, and they push conspiracy theories.
So that's why, it's not a hoax, because Trump participated in it, whether or not the Russians got cooperation from a guy like Manafort, who lobbies for Russian interests and has made, we went over the millions of dollars that he got paid, $10 million to give the Russians in 2005, a plan, a real serious, written down, typed up, signed off on plan by Paul Manafort about how to infiltrate American politics, how to infiltrate campaigns. Paul Manafort's partner is Rick Davis. Rick Davis did, after the 2005 $10 million project that Manafort worked on and gave to Putin about how you affect American elections. All of a sudden, his partner Rick Davis became John McCain's campaign manager, and the next thing you know, he's running with Sarah Palin, who is now the preeminent Russian expert for John McCain. I mean, it's just insane, right? And so now you've got Manafort acting as Trump's campaign manager. Oh, it's just such a small world, isn't it? It's just such a tiny, teeny world. But, of course, today in the Washington Post, you have an article by Adam Entus. They do the most amazing reporting. Entus is insane. But, of course, Facebook is turning over these 3,000 ads that were backed by $100,000. And obviously they targeted Americans based on sexual preference, race, and geography in order to sow chaos inside this country and to divide Americans along those lines. And the president is still doing it. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.